So welcome, Darren, to Escape the Rat Race Radio. How are you today?
Thanks for having me, Christy. I'm really well, thank you.
It's really nice to catch up with you. It's been some time since we last spoke, and I'm sure we'll cover that in our conversation today. So before we get going, would you mind letting everybody know what business you're in, Darren, and what specifically that involves day to day?
Yeah, Christian, I'm in a business called Botanical Boys. We essentially teach people the old art of terrarium masterclass design, essentially tapping into corporations and individuals and well-being. So there's a big well-being factor on bringing that old tradition back. We all live in a big city, so my idea was to bring gardening on the inside. Most of us don't have outdoor space. So the old tradition, which started way back in 1829, popular in the 60s and 70s, sort of disappeared for a while, and now it's become a new trend, and I've picked up on it initially as a hobby, now turned into a mini business. I'm quite surprised on how well it's picked up. I've been invited to lots of events we can talk about later on
Oh,
in the interview.
fantastic. Yeah.
And specifically what I do during the day is we're speaking to clients, we're speaking to event organizers. For instance, I was at the Ideal Home Show, which was fully sponsored, which was an amazing feat, only being in this business for 1 year. So it's given me a good highlight for the future. And also we've got a retail arm as well, where we sell specific hand bespoke made terrariums, which are more designer for interior decor. So I go and speak to retailers on a regular basis, the admin things as well, which most of us don't like doing, but it has to be done. Stock check and looking for suppliers of glass, for instance, which is a bit difficult in this country, surprisingly, getting decent glass for the gardens I create. So that's been a bit of a journey,
So
search beyond these waters. Yeah.
really full on, day to day, hands on in your own business, which sounds really, really fantastic, Darren. So we're going to split today's conversation into three parts. And part one is where you were, part two, where you are now, and part three, where you want to get to. So can you tell our listeners, Darren, where you used to work and what you used to do before you started your own business?
Yeah, certainly quite different. I was an IT project manager for several years, working across the rail sector, National Health Service, and more recently the charity sector for the last 6 years. Working in that role, typical 9 till 5, coming in, dealing with politics, dealing with difficult stakeholders, and the usual sort of project management stuff. I'm sure some of your listeners may have touched on that career choice. Very difficult job sometimes, dealing with difficult people, but
Yeah.
and essentially that's my background. I finished that just recently. So
Okay. And can you
yeah.
describe, Darren, at what point you realized that you didn't want to work for somebody else any longer? And what were the first steps that you took to set about changing your situation?
It was around about November 2016, to be precise. I rent a room out on Airbnb, and they approached us with a new experience program. And they asked us whether we wanted to get involved in their big project. So we were invited to their offices in London. And we came up with a botanical experience, which was a hobby at the time, and we didn't realize how far it would get, just being on a platform as Airbnb, as to where I am now today. So some of the steps initially we took was to essentially design a tour package which was botanical related for people visiting London and also people living in London. And that essentially took people around on a 1.5-day botanical tour of London. But we quickly realized, as that got started off, that was too much to ask for people. 1.5 days of being with this guy who's not essentially a tour operator. You know, who is this guy? Who's this Botanical Boys? So what we did find that we narrowed the experiences down to a 2-hour slot, which I now run workshops every week, about 4 workshops a week during the evenings, which is a lot more convenient. They're 2-hour workshops. So I took steps to design a specifically focused terrarium masterclass session. And because of that, we get lots of birthday surprises. I have a live work unit at home at the moment, so it's quite interesting to see people coming in and they're suddenly surprised. They're standing in your room in your workshop and they're like, "Oh, this is fantastic! This is my birthday surprise. What is it we're doing? There's all these glass vases around. Oh, we're doing a terrarium. That's it." And for me, the experience of seeing people's eyes light up and having a wonderful couple of hours it is just tremendous for me, and that keeps the burning fire inside of me keeping going. So
Wow.
the steps of that, of course, was designing, focusing, what do people need? And the outcome to that, Christian, just to finish that point, we've been invited by several corporates, including Facebook. We had a fantastic time with Facebook and Pantone last year, and we were invited specifically to celebrate the colour green. And we ran all the workshops for their colour green event. So yeah, there's all those little spin-offs which are happening as well, which is very exciting.
Wow, that certainly is. Congratulations for that, Darren. And what were the critical decisions that you had to make, or the parameters that you set for yourself to help you decide exactly when was the right time for you to quit your job and transition over?
I think like any entrepreneur working in a 9 till 5 job, first and foremost, it was how am I going to finance myself? I'm getting a steady paycheck. I've got a responsible role, but with that responsible role comes the politics and comes the downside to a 9 till 5 job. So I think the downside to the 9 till 5 lifestyle really sort of outweighed any risks. I had some savings put aside, and I thought to myself, you know what? I'm getting some interest. I've been picking away at this for the last year whilst I've been working my last job. My old boss knew what I was doing. He was actually weirdly quite supportive of it, and I knew, because of the interest we were getting, it was time to make a leap, and I took that leap with some savings, and I've now been off work without a proper paycheck, which is quite liberating in some respect, but also quite nerving in another. But I know there's stuff coming in which I can focus on, and I know I've got something there which I can grab with two hands
Oh,
uh,
amazing.
and make a go of it. So
Yeah.
yes, a little bit risky, but also quite exciting.
Yeah. And that kind of rolls into part two when the first question is, so, how long ago is it now since you quit the rat race?
Yeah, perfectly. I quit the rat race in February, the 9th of February this year, in fact, so very
Yeah.
soon.
Yeah.
But it's been a year, as I said earlier, in the making of that, and we've just been invited to lots of events, and so I've got a big plan for this year. We're doing Ideal Home Show, we're doing the House and Garden Show in the Olympia as well in June, and a couple of other good things in between, and lots of workshops, of course, in the evenings. So
Yeah. And we were chatting just before we kind of pressed record on the interview. And I was saying, Darren, I've been running Escape the Rat Race meetups for 3 years now. And at the beginning, people, come along and then sometimes I don't see them. And, I used to get a bit upset. I was like, oh, where have they gone, and then I realized, you know what? People are just out there getting on with it. People have come along, they've got some inspiration, they've learned a little bit, and now they're just out there doing it. And that is exactly the case with yourself and your partner, Ben, in that you came along to some meetups and it was really great to see you both. And I think, some property meetups and things like that. And then you disappeared a little bit and we lost touch. And then when I heard from you again, you had all of this amazing news that you'd been working on building up the business, and it was so inspiring.
yeah, Christian, I think the stepping stone really, when we found the ETRR meetup group, that was kind of a big stepping stone for me in 2016. Been a while, as you said, but certainly the information I got from the people and your guests and people who attended the session was so inspiring, and it was very easy for me to talk about idea. I didn't really have an idea or focus when I was at your sessions, but it really started to get me to think, this thing, escaping the rat race, it is a big deal for some people, but if you've got something you're really truly passionate about, and the good thing about your sessions where you were able to get people to feel confident about what they enjoyed in their lives and actually make something of it, whether it be a skill, a hobby, or a business idea. And that was really inspiring for me. So I never forgot about you, Christian, or your group. I did listen, took lots of notes, and
Oh.
the outcome has obviously, moved on from there.
Oh, well, I'm very happy that if I could play a tiny, tiny little part in your success, Darren, then I'm very happy about that. So, Darren, tell us, what are three of your biggest realizations that you've had since transitioning from being an employee to becoming an entrepreneur?
I think I realized I didn't really want to work for someone else anymore, and one of the biggest realizations of that, I didn't have a boss or a management team or an IT team around me to help me with the decision making on solving problems, coming up with new ideas, research, etc., as you do as a PM. So it was kind of, the realization is, when you go along the route of being an entrepreneur of any level, you're kind of on your own in a way. It can be a little bit of a lonely world, but because of my business, it's out there on Instagram. I've got a big following on Instagram, so I'm always connecting with people, and I think that truly really helped me get over the fear about being on my own and making the decisions alone. And of course, my partner Ben helps with some of the critical decisions as well, which is really useful. And I think the secondly is feeling of ownership, having all the decisions, and the ideas, and the freedom to go out and try new things, because you don't have anyone else in your ear telling you, well, you can't do this because policy says this and stakeholder A says this and you can't do that. So that's actually quite a nice realization, a little bit sense of freedom. And thirdly, with that sense of freedom is, I can go and visit family when I feel I have a break coming up. I can spend time more on the difficult things, and spend more time on the things I really want to do, other than following someone else's rules. I think that just helps, relax a person's mind into focusing on what your true passion is. And for me, the passion really drives this business. And that's exciting, rather than just stuck on a 9 to 5 because someone else is telling you what to do, or
Mm, yeah,
so that's quite liberating, if I was
yeah.
to wrap that up. Yeah.
Yeah, no, no, I love that. I love that, Darren. And you're absolutely right. If you're not passionate about your business, then when the tough times come, which they always will, then, you're going to fall over and struggle, and then maybe even revert back to the easy 9 to 5 lifestyle and just picking up that paycheck every month.
Yeah.
So, Darren, part three, where you want to get to. So, did you set yourself any goals or targets when you decided to leave your job to start your own business? And have you reached them yet?
Yeah, I set quite a few goals before I left. First and foremost, I just wanted to first really find what that passion was, and will it make sense to actually make that leap. I realized, as I mentioned earlier, over a year, I was trialing different workshops out, especially with other platforms like Airbnb and another platform called Obby. And it allowed me to test my market essentially and get real feedback. So one of the first goals was to really get some good feedback from customers. I think that's really important for anyone setting out on their own journey, because without that feedback, you're kind of in the wind slightly and taking a bit more risk. And I'm slightly risk averse person sometimes, which is not always a great trait for an entrepreneur. But in particular, my decision making for me personally, I needed to make sure customers, potential customers, were happy with what I was producing. So I've met that goal. I've proven the feedback. I've almost got 6,000 followers on Instagram in just a few short months. We've been asked to do some sponsorship events at the Kensington Olympia, Ideal Home, for instance, and the other companies I mentioned earlier, which has been fantastic. So I know I can do corporates. So the other goal was to try and get into the corporate model, on the well-being factor. So teaching people in corporates the alternative team events by getting people around a table and being creative and actually greening up the spaces, which is something I'm very passionate about. And I know that works. So I think I'm meeting that goal. I haven't quite met the goal of having big contracts yet, but I'm working quite quickly towards that. And I think the third goal for me is really making people feel really happy about what we're doing. Money comes second, I think, in business. Yes, business, we're in it to make money. But first and foremost, for me in my business, it's about people. It's about well-being. It's about feeling of satisfaction. It's putting your mobile phone down and getting back to nature and creating something special and unique and bespoke. And overall, Christian, to give you some figures, I've probably designed now within a year over 800 different terrarium design gardens, and every single one of them has been totally different with the clients. And that's a wonderful thing to see and witness. And I suppose the final goal for me is, making money, of course, and making that big decision to leave a 9 to 5 job. It doesn't quite make the same salary at this stage. As I said, it's only been recent. In February, I've made that leap, but I know it's on the right track. I just need to focus, work hard, keep that passion in the belly. I never get bored of it, which is sometimes I got in a 9 to 5 and the passion wasn't quite there. So I think finally is to keep that passion going, and eventually once there's more of a big consistent business opportunities, which I'm aiming towards, then I will meet that final goal, and then I'll know for sure, this is big business rather than small business, but let's hope and dream and then work hard for that.
Yeah, it's great. I can relate to absolutely everything that you're saying, Darren. And I think so many people listening to this who are in a similar situation of, building a business and getting things going. Sometimes you have to take a step back in order to be able to take, 2 steps forwards. And with regards to income, sure, it may be that it's a year or two where you're not earning as much as you were in your job, but your job is always going to be capped at a certain amount. You might get a small percentage raise or a little bit of a bonus each year, but you understand when you start building a business, there really is no cap on the amount that you can earn. You are in full control. And that leads me straight into my next question for you, Darren, which is, do you feel as if you have greater potential now to achieve your life goals now that you've got more control over your time?
Yeah, absolutely, Christian. Both financially and well-being for me. As I said to you earlier, I really have a great passion for this, and it's certainly on trend at the moment. So I know I've got in the market just at the right time. And my feedback for me, the driver in this business is people. And when I know people have had a fantastic time and they start talking about us, they blog about us, they write about us, I've had a few articles as well, which is exciting. That just keeps me driving forward. So I know that, I found something which is essentially was on the back of a piece of paper and now it's turned into a little business. I just need to make it a bigger business. And that's the hardest thing to do in any sort of route. And there's going to be ups and downs in trialing different ideas. And I think you have to go along those waves and those patterns to sort of get to a stable point. And I think a year in, I've learned a hell of a lot in comparison to working in a company. So for me, yeah, it's the path, if you like, it's not a straight path, which I kind of like, because I know there's some surprises going to be along the way, and maybe they're good surprises. But yeah, exciting in that sense.
Yeah, it sure is interesting and can be a bit of a roller coaster at times,
Yeah,
but I think we enjoy that ride.
yeah.
um, so finally, Darren, what's the one most important thing that you believe will help you over the next 12 months to continue on the path to success?
I think keeping the passion is the first and foremost. Without the passion, I don't believe I would have a business. Keeping people engaged, keeping the social networks going. I'm on Instagram every day, and it's surprising how long you actually spend on liking other people's work to get some good feedback and good followers. That for me is really important, the social networks. And speaking to companies as well about offering my experiences to their staff on a well-being front. So and as a retail side of the business also I've just introduced. So, 3 important things there. First of all, people, retail and corporates and special events. That's my biggest goals for this year, Christian.
Yeah, great. Okay, Darren, so for anyone listening right now, maybe they're squashed up on that train on the way to work or stuck in a traffic jam and they want to do something different with their lives, but perhaps they're still letting fear hold them back. What would you like to say to them?
Well, I would say you and you alone can make your life change or realize your dreams. The only people holding you back is yourself. There's people around we meet in the world who give us inspiration and ideas and feedback. But ultimately, in my life, I've listened to that feedback, but I've never taken it literally. and I've made my own decisions. Because taking that leap is kind of a bit nervous and a bit scary for some people. But if you don't, no one else is going to do it for you. And when you do, it's truly, truly liberating to have the feedback from the people you used to work with. For example, my boss, previously my CIO, has commended the journey I've taken, and he can't believe how quickly it's moved on within a year. And to have that feedback from being stuck in a 9 till 5 to something you've started essentially from a scrap of paper, and it's that passion that drives that change in your life, it's just wonderful. So for me, go out, realize your dream. If it's a sensible jump and you thought about it and you think it can work, well then, what the hell, go out and just try it, because you'll never know otherwise.
Blimey, Darren, you're making the hairs on my arms stand up after that.
I truly believe that. I truly mean that.
No, that's it's wonderful to hear that, and I feel very, very privileged and proud to have to have met you on the way along that journey, and to be friends and see you having such success. It really, really is inspiring. I hope that everyone listening feels exactly the same way. Darren, you have been a wonderful guest, a wonderful escapee on Escape the Rat Race Radio today. Thanks so much. Please make sure you and Ben do pop along one time in the next few months and say hello.
Yeah, maybe we'll do a terrarium class for all your team one day. We'll definitely pop in for coffee. Thanks, Christian, for having me on the show.
Thanks a lot, Darren. Take care.
Thanks. You too.